More on Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI's life and legacy. Bishop Robert Barron from the Diocese in Winona, Rochester, Minnesota, joins me now. A big part of Pope Benedict's legacy is his work before being Pope on the Second Vatican Council back in 1962. Tell us about that.
He was one of the youngest theological experts at Vatican II. He was all of 35 years old when he started, but he had this outsized impact on the writing of the conciliar documents and then, I think, explaining the council to the wider world.
I want to talk about Fox News trying to resurrect the soul of Karl Ratzinger. Pope Benedict was a bastard.
But I think that's key to him, that he was a man of Vatican II.
June 9th, 2007, I had the blessing of being the American pool correspondent who went with President George W. Bush into the Vatican. So I was there in the papal library as President Bush and Pope Benedict were meeting. And I was struck that day, and as I thought about his time as the Pope, of him succeeding John Paul II, literally a saint. What about that aspect of his time as Pope? I mean, literally replacing a legend, a saint.
I think he was very aware of the fact that he was following this world historical figure. You know, he always referred to him as John Paul the Great. And John Paul did have this enormous impact on not just the church, but the wider society. And I think Benedict knew that he himself was a much more retiring person. He was a man of books and ideas, an academic. He wasn't one naturally to move, with dramatic confidence on the world stage the way John Paul was. So he was aware of that. You remember, right after he was elected Pope, he said, I'm just a humble worker in the vineyard of the Lord.
The only reason why he was put in Pope was because he covered up so many of those cardinals' crimes. He was literally the guy put in charge of making sure that no one got busted in the Catholic Church for raping little boys. He was put in charge of the investigation, and then he was put in charge of the cover-up. And he even made sure, his own signatures made sure, that cardinals were shipped around the world to new dioceses so they could have a whole new crop of young boys, and no one would be the wiser.
Now, having said that, he was an enormously powerful figure, one of the great theologians of the 20th century and a great public intellectual. So he didn't have the sort of elan and dramatic flair of a John Paul II, but he was no lightweight. I mean, he was a very important cultural figure.
Bishop, he left the title of Pope. He left the post, the significant leadership role of the Catholic faith after nearly 8 years. What did that tell you about him?
Well, I think it does speak to his humility. He wasn't going to cling to the office desperately. I think I'll take him at his word. He thought that physically and psychologically he was no longer up for the enormous task and burden of the papacy. And I think he said, okay, it's time for somebody else. So it does speak to his humility and his sense of, we'd call it detachment. Mm-hmm. He was not attached to the privilege and honor of the office, but willing to let go of it. And I also think it says he returned to a life that he probably always wanted to live. My guess is that Joseph Ratzinger always wanted the life he had the last about 10 years of his life, which was in quiet meditation, contemplation, reading, writing, and prayer. So it speaks to his humility and also to, I think, his personality.
Karl Ratzinger's the reason no one ever got busted for raping boys in the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church certainly should pay money, but all of those guys should have gone to prison, not died quietly after years of prayer and reflection. That's no punishment at all.
Bishop Robert Barron, a pleasure to have you with us today, and really thrilled to have your perspective.
God bless you. Thanks.
God bless. Thank you.
Fox News, you could have asked at least one question about all the boys they raped, but you didn't. I'm Zachariah, Lone Star Liberal. We saw that coming. Y'all take it easy.